Welcome back to another Lab tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about how to quickly make drum patterns or arrange your drums by using an arpeggiator to make it all happen. All right, now this is actually a really great way to break out a writer's block. Perhaps you're producing for a new type of music genre and you're a little unsure as to how to navigate the waters with the drum patterns. This is very common. Maybe you just want a new creative angle on something. Regardless of why you're doing it, we're going to show you a really neat way to make it happen very quickly. If for no other reason, you may end up putting this same technique to use in your own projects just to save a little bit of time and to keep the creative process going quickly. All right. So we've got a simple sample here of a hi-hat. Okay, nothing special, nothing to write home about. We wanted to use an element that's going to be found in most types of music. I think a hi-hat, we can all agree, is a pretty common element in music these days. So here we go. Follow along with a hi-hat sample of your own if you want. Go ahead and right-click and convert to a new sampler track, and all of a sudden we've got ourselves a sampler loaded with our hi-hat. So now it's a playable instrument, okay? And what we're going to do here is just extend the one MIDI note in this region out across the entire bar. And in case you're wondering why it generated a full bar region, it's because we had a loop region set up at one full bar, okay? Kind of uses that as the guide. All right, so now all we need to do is load up an arpeggiator. Okay, and we'll want to figure out what kind of rate we want and all that kind of stuff. But first, what we would like to do is set up a pattern. Okay. And maybe we kind of go with something basic at first. We don't have to get too fancy with any of this. Usually the third beat in a 4-beat bar is going to be your accent note, but by no means is this a pattern that you need to duplicate exactly or anything. This is just kind of off the cuff here. Okay, so now let's play through our pattern. We'll turn off our arpeggiator first so you can hear exactly what this one MIDI note sounds like with a hi-hat. Exactly what you might expect it to sound like. But as soon as we turn on our arpeggiator and play this back, listen. Okay, now this is a good study in the idea that it's not always about the notes that you're playing or not playing that make up the groove in a song. It has to do with many other things like swing and velocity as well. Now, those parameters actually happen to be programmed into the MIDI information that is being carried from the arpeggiator. Okay, so we can look at how long our note is, if there's any randomness involved in our note length. How about our velocity? Is there any some randomization to the velocity value that's being put through? Okay, so there are a few patterns or parameters that you can play with while listening back through your pattern. Okay, now that's obviously a lot more interesting than just 16 notes played all the way through, same exact velocity. Let's try this one. Okay, so it's as easy as just flipping off a channel or a step inside of the arpeggiator to get a quick break in there, okay? Okay, so there are some timing options in here. You can also pick your note order, obviously. All right, so let's say that you found a pattern that you really like. Okay, what can you do with that? Obviously, you can just let this run through. If you wanted to make one big region for the entire length of your song or something, you can do that. You can also control this live with a MIDI controller. Okay, instead of a grid, or at least this particular arpeggiator plugin will allow you to do that. Another thing you can do, and I think this is probably one of the more powerful things that you can get out of something like this, is to deconstruct the MIDI information. Okay, so for instance, we go back into our options page here and we turn up our swing a bit. Okay, now we listen to our beat. Okay, it sounds pretty different. It sounds kind of shuffled. Let's take a look at these two things. So you can see, if we zoom in here, you could probably see it a little bit easier, that the notes in the second region are offset just a bit. Okay, and that's because of that swing parameter. Human drummers are not always going to play exactly on the beat. Neither, and the same can be said about velocity. Okay, that's part of the human element that's tough to nail when you're programming drums through MIDI. So let's listen to these two here. Oops. Okay, so some pretty interesting patterns here, but the big takeaway is that you can actually create these pretty incredible MIDI patterns through a tool like an Arpeggiator. You can kind of stumble into something very cool and then use it. You can also then learn from it. Okay, so you can take this or one of these MIDI regions and maybe drop that down onto a different instrument altogether. Just to further deconstruct and better understand exactly how this pattern is working. What exactly did that swing do, and how do these velocity changes compare to one another? And then how can we correlate that when we're creating our own patterns from scratch? You know, you're looking at these velocity patterns as well as note patterns. You know, in this pattern that we just made here, every third beat or every third strike of the hi-hat is a higher velocity, and you can see that represented in the colors down here. You can see that these are our 4 highest velocity strikes. Now, so there's a pattern there, and there's something that you can take away and apply to something else. All right, so it's a great way just to, again, get past some writer's block or change things up a bit. You don't need to go for a 16th note beat. You can come in here and you can change up your rate to a whole bunch of different things. Oops. All right, obviously, there are many choices that you can run with here. We hope that this is something that makes you think a little bit differently about the Arpeggiator. Just because it may have initially been intended to be used with synth instruments does not mean that that's always how it needs to be used. And this is a really great example of just kind of breaking out of the confines of the traditional role that a tool has played for you in the studio or on stage for that matter, and how you can better use it in today's era, in digital era specifically, just to create new and innovative ideas, make unique changes in your projects. All right, so again, we hope that this helped you come up with just one more way to make cool drum patterns. And don't forget that oftentimes, you know, you'll see this little button here, this little feature where you can drag MIDI into your arrangement window. If you've made something cool in a plugin that has that feature available, open up that MIDI region and take a look at those notes. Have that same exact MIDI region copied down to a different instrument entirely, and see exactly what kind of correlations you can make once you start seeing and hearing things in tandem together in different situations like this from the same exact MIDI information. It's a pretty cool way to learn. So yeah, we hope that this helped. Hope that it sparked a couple of ideas. Hopefully you can put it to use in your very next project. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.